Nerd Reactor. Roll off.
Welcome, everybody, to the very first episode of That Nerd Life podcast. I'm your host, Arvin Santiago, and joining me today is my co-host,
Robert Galvin.
How you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
It's hot. It's making me miserable.
Yeah, it is pretty hot today. Everyone loves California until you live in it.
Yeah, I mean, granted, us being in California for most of our lives, I can't still get used to this heat. I mean, it's only like 85 degrees, but that's hot.
Yeah,
that's hot to me.
It's like 87 over here.
I'm good at like 72.
Oh, my AC. I always like to set it to 69. Anything above that is too hot for me.
Yeah, I'm sweating profusely, glistening over here. But I will say it's making me look sexy.
That's good.
But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk to you guys about pretty much this new podcast. This is the official podcast for Nerd Reactor, which you could visit us at nerdreactor.com. That was a shameless plug, by the way. You know, this is, I would say, the third version of that podcast?
Yep.
Yeah, because there was a podcast a few years back. We stopped doing that. We rebooted it. Or not really rebooted it, but
turned it back on.
And then we stopped. And then we just started focusing more on YouTube videos. Like the Mike and John show, where they react to TV shows, movie trailers, movies, and stuff like that. And other cool videos that we do. But you know what? We decided that Nerd Reactor needs its own podcast. So that's what we're giving to you. For this podcast, just like our previous ones before, we're going to talk about all things nerdy. Stuff from the news, movies, TVs, and pretty much things that we consider nerdy.
Well, not just things that are nerdy. We're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about dating as a nerd. We're going to talk about, just living.
Dating as a nerd, though? Come on.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. For those who don't know, Robert's married. He succeeded in that nerd life, dating lifestyle.
And Arvin's got a baby mama, future baby mama, so I think we did pretty good.
Yeah. But, like Robert said, we're going to talk about things that not necessarily nerdy, but things that affect our daily lives and things that we encounter, and so forth and so on. But like I said, this is our third version of this podcast. I wasn't necessarily with the first or second one, but I don't remember. Bob, were you with the first and second podcast?
Yes, I was.
And how was that like?
So the first version of the podcast was, I think we had like 8 people on it, which is ridiculous now that I'm obsessed and listen to a lot of different podcasts, 2, maybe 3 people max. And
yeah, and this podcast is just the 2 of us.
Yeah. So maybe there will be a third person, coming every episode to help, talk about certain subjects based on what their experiences, someone who's dating or someone who knows a lot about movies. We'll have those kind of people to help us out too, but primarily it's going to be Arvin and me who'll be hosting. And yeah, the first rendition we had 8 people. It got a little hectic. There was a lot of people talking over one another, and then we kind of put it on hold, and then we went back to season 2, which we called Nerds of the Round Table. I was never really a fan of that name, but that's what they decided to go with. And there was less fuss. I think there was about 4 or 5, and we talked about really hot topics like when Batgirl with Killing Joke, Wonder Woman, Final Fantasy, Aquaman, Kojima when they had their rumored fallout, and Jason Momoa, what he said about Marvel. We talked a lot about that kind of stuff. So, we focus a lot on news, and we'll do a little bit of news every episode towards the end of every ep. But we've kind of learned from the first two seasons, and now we're gonna be like Ghostbusters and do a reboot that hopefully doesn't lose $60 million.
But this reboot is an all male cast. Ooh, burn.
That's cold blooded.
That's cold blooded.
We're gonna get in trouble.
But to be honest, I can't really judge the Ghostbusters movie because I never saw it. I would like to see it. I just never got around the time to see it. But I have not heard good things about it. But that's not going to stop me. I'll still watch it. Have you seen it?
No, I actually wanted to see it, and nobody wanted to go see it with me. So I actually plan to go and see it kind of by myself sometime this week.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the all-female cast that stops us from seeing it. I think it's just because we grew up with the originals, and they were so good. So it's kind of hard to swallow that pill where you're like, I don't want to watch another remake.
See, I don't care.
Reboot.
I don't care about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I like Melissa McCarthy. I think she's, this generation's Chris Farley, which she's, gladly compared herself as, because she's really good with that really loud, obnoxious, body kind of humor where she rolls around and does stuff that makes people laugh.
Yeah.
Paul Feig is, I think, a great director. And then it even has one of my favorite comedians and podcasters, Adam Ray, in it. So I was actually pretty excited for the movie. First, I wasn't, and then the more I learned about it, I was like, oh, okay, this won't be bad. And then I wanted to see it, and nobody was willing to go see it with me.
But you can't forget that it also has international heartthrob Chris Hemsworth in the movie.
Oh, yeah. That's my wife's crush.
When you say your wife's crush, do you mean yourself?
No, I remember before Avengers came out and we'd see a movie and the trailer came on, and every time he came on screen, she'd giggle, and I'd look over at her, and she's like, "I'll go see that just because he's in it." And I know a lot of females think the same thing about Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that the Ghostbusters movie had a lot of backlash. A lot of people were ragging on it. Especially what's her name, Leslie Jones. She was getting a lot of hate tweets about it, and things like that. But like I said, I'm not really judging the movie on that. I am gonna see it eventually, so I will say that I don't really have a disinterest in the movie, but I will say that I helped contribute to that $60 million loss because I have not seen it yet.
Yeah, well, I just think everyone should go see stuff for themselves before they judge. A big example of that is Suicide Squad. One thing we've talked about, I hate Rotten Tomatoes, so I'll put that out there.
Hopefully Rotten Tomatoes will never be a sponsor of ours.
I doubt they will. Their critics that they have who evaluate these movies are the complete wrong people. Why would you have Mommy Blogs and Mary Jane and the Florida Gazette and all these random these random people who are reviewing it that have no idea what the Suicide Squad even is, and they're more into, if you look at the reviews they do, they're like, oh, the Joy Luck Club was the greatest movie ever made. Well, the Joy Luck Club wasn't made for the same audience as Suicide Squad, so the reviewer should not be a fan of, if they only like dramas, they shouldn't be evaluating comedies or action films. And that's my big problem with them. And look at Suicide Squad now, this weekend again, is the number one movie for the second weekend in a row. If you look at the critic reviews, it's like 25%, but it has, a B+ cinema score, which is what really counts. So I think that everyone should at least go judge stuff for themselves before they talk about something.
Yeah, and with the whole Rotten Tomatoes controversy thing, I understand that the people who review it, the people on Rotten Tomatoes who review it, fanboys and people who enjoy comic book movies need to understand the most important, the one thing about the reviews that they see on Rotten Tomatoes is that the guys who review these movies are professional reviewers. Like, this is their job. It's either they've been doing it for years, or they went to college and got a degree in like film studies and things like that. So the way they review the movie is based on the merits of like, how's the story, how's it structured, how's the acting, how's how's the cinematography, how's the directing and things like that. So you like for us who love comic book movies, like you said, we can't really judge it on that because we have to see the movie for ourselves because we know the source material, we know where it comes from, we know what we're looking for, and that's how we judge the movies. That's why, like, I know you hate Rotten Tomatoes, but like you know what you like, right? As far as these comic book movies, or as any of these movies as a general.
So, my problem is that people go to see movies to have fun, right? And what they look for are not big movies. They look for these films that are small. No one's really heard too much about them. You know, they're like, I always think of American Beauty. You know, the guy in it who's like recording the bag moving around in the wind, the trash bag. Like,
Yeah.
if that was a movie, Rotten Tomatoes would give it a 99%.
Most likely.
They love Michael Moore movies. I don't understand. But movies like Suicide Squad get 27%, but have made $450 million worldwide and $133 million domestically. Like, that's got to tell you something. And this has happened before with other movies. Not all the time, but, you know, there's a couple times where they've said something was bad and the movie still did really well.
Yeah. I mean, so that's why I don't get why people were so upset about Rotten Tomatoes and how they're, like, petitioning about it. It's because, like, it's like, come on. It's like, you're going to see the movie anyway, right? It's like, you don't have to, like, if you wanted to see the movie from day one, you're going to go see the movie, regardless of what anybody says. Like, if I told you that I was going to see Suicide Squad, and then in turn you were like, oh, no, that movie sucks. I mean, I'm still going to watch it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm probably going to walk in with a little bit, with a little caution that, yeah, I might be walking into a movie that's terrible. But, you know, you never know until you go see the final product. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, it really, I guess this kind of segues into what I wanted to ask you. Like, you and I are nerds. We love comic books, we love video games, we love movies, we love TV shows and things like that. And and all our friends are pretty much nerds. I'm gonna put that in quotes, nerds.
Mm-hmm. Different kinds of nerds.
Yeah. So, like, this day and age compared to when you and I were growing up, I mean, and I'm not saying it like we're old guys in our 40s, but we grew up when the term nerd was a little bit more different than it is now.
Yeah. Pre-Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. Before Comic-Con was a shit show to get into.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say, you know what I would say really turned around the whole aspects of nerd was the very first Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say X-Men and Spider-Man. The first two.
When those like growing up and saying that you're into comic books, into video games like that, it's like you were kind of judged as being like the weird kid and the loner. Like in school, you were the cool kid if you were playing sports, and you were just like hanging out at the park with your buddies after school.
Yeah, I was a closet nerd. I didn't tell any of my friends that I bought and read comic books in high school. You know, that wasn't a topic that came up when I was talking to girls because I thought, you know, it had this really bad association.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there. I'm up there with you because, like, I remember running home. Well, not necessarily running, but walking fast to watch Pokemon. When Pokemon first came on, and it was on at like 3:30, and it's like all my friends were like, "Hey, let's go to the mall," and I'm like, "Yeah, nah, I'm just gonna go home and hang out." But really, I was watching Pokemon.
Yeah, I used to like sneak into, you know, not even sneak, but like go in my room and turn on the TV really low and close my door all the way, and like, my mom probably thought I was like fapping or something, but I was, in high school right after ninth grade, I was trying to watch like Justice League and Batman the animated series, and Superman animated series, and I felt like I was doing something really naughty, and I was just trying to watch an animated superhero show or cartoon, because I was like 14, 15. I didn't want them to think that I was some kind of weirdo.
Yeah, I mean, because all of high school until maybe senior year, I didn't have a job. I didn't have that after school job, so I would go home and I would watch the fuck out of some cartoons. Like Batman,
Spider-Man the animated series,
Spider-Man the animated
X-Men.
series, Pokemon. For some reason, I got into watching Yu-Gi-Oh.
I never got into
Pokemon
or Digimon or Yu-Gi-Oh. Never could get into those.
But it's like, and then like when I found out Dragon Ball came to American television, an American dubbed, I was all about that.
Yep. That was earlier though. That was like 6th grade for me when I was when I was sneaking downstairs at 7 a.m. on a Saturday to watch Dragon Ball.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, and of course, my parents never judged me. They didn't really care what I was doing as long as I was succeeding in school, because I came from that Asian household where as long as I'm passing my classes, it's all good, whatever I do. But it's like, I never really told anybody what I was watching or what I was into, because it's not like I would go to school the next day and be like, hey, guys, did you catch last night's Pokemon episode?
Yeah.
Like that episode was the shit. It's like that never really happened. I mean, nowadays it does when we're talking with our buddies and we're talking about like what happened to last night's Flash episode or Supergirl episode or whatnot. But back then it's like you never really watched Smallville unless you're like a girl, because there was a lot of drama in that show.
I love Smallville.
I mean, I watched it a couple times. I think like after the second season, the third season, I couldn't watch it anymore. But I remember it's like none of my friends really watched Smallville.
Yeah, I didn't have any friends who watched it either. And this was at the not the birth of the internet, but the birth of social internet, I would say. Like when we were in high school, AOL Instant Messenger was it. Was
king.
Yeah. And then came like Rate USA, the first social site, and then
Hot or Not.
Yeah.
Don't forget about Hot or
Then
Not.
MySpace. And so we were in that age where chatting online versus having to wait to see someone at school. If not, you had to call them and risk, the mom and dad answering or a sibling. Like, this was the way to talk to people. And then you had status updates come out. What are you doing? Oh, I'm watching this. But even then, you still couldn't put it. And now people get pissed if you put anything like, hey, Game of Thrones, and you get spoilers. People get super mad about that.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you kind of kept it to yourself. You never really told your buddies about it. But the kids that were walking around like your school that were known as the nerds, like, did you ever see them getting picked on or bullied or anything like that?
I was, so one of our friends, Jose, he was a nerd. But I was kind of in the middle. I was friends with everyone. And I actually used to pick on this one nerd, and I felt really bad until I think about junior year and he was weird. He clearly had like Asperger's, which is something that I would know now, but then I didn't know. I just thought he was a weirdo. And then one day he gave this presentation about Tesla, and and I was like astounded by it. I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, this is so interesting. And so I went, and I remember I sat down at the table, and he had his bike and his helmet there next to him, and we talked for like 30 minutes the whole lunch about Tesla. And from that point on, like, I went from picking on him to like defending him and just talking to him about all this random stuff, and he'd get so excited. And like, to me, that was a nerd. Not like how we are, we're all social, and Mike's got a girlfriend, you have a girlfriend, like I'm married. Like, we're this completely different level of nerds now than 10 years ago. But yeah, that's kind of what I saw then.
Yeah, because I mean, I saw kids in my high school. No one was like hung up from from the flagpole or anything like
Yeah,
that.
nothing
Stuff
like
you
that.
see in movies, but you know, you'd see kids getting ridiculed for being nerds. And I remember in high school, our computer class, there was maybe like 10 kids that were really into computers, that knew how to build a computer and knew what to say. And like, if you asked them what kind of processor they had, they would break it down for you, and then tell you what kind of memory they're holding, what kind of hard drives they had, what kind of graphic cards they were using, and things like that. And I mean, I went into that class because, you know, I had an interest in computers from my older brother and things like that. But yeah, but back then, like, that wasn't cool.
You know what's
To be into
funny
computers.
is I took this is where actually I met Jose, was through a computer technician class, and it was an ROP class. I took it like my junior year, and there was these older people in it getting, you know, the A+ hardware certification, and I took it because I liked computers. You know, I'd been messing around with DOS since I was a kid, and you know, the Windows when it came out, and I took a computer programming class over the summer because my parents were like, either you come to work with us because they're Mexican, and said you either come to work with us because we don't trust you to be home alone, or you take summer school. And so I was like, I'll take summer school. So I took a computer applications class and programming class, and that's actually where I met Mallory, who's my wife. And what I did is I hacked the very, very basic security that the computers have. So like for the administrator rights, I was able to kind of figure out how to get past it and how to run a mobile AOL Instant Messenger program. And then also how to open the CD-ROM drive because they were locked, so that we could listen to music while we were in class doing all this typing and learning HTML and all this stuff. And so I actually made a lot of friends because of that, because I knew how to do that stuff. So I used my nerd knowledge to build relationships with people. So sometimes having that knowledge actually does help you.
Yeah. I mean, like, because for me, I would say my nerd stuff, my nerdiness or nerddom, I don't know how you would say it, but you know, that started when I was like in second grade, because you know, I have older brothers who were into all the comic books, Marvel, DC. It was a huge thing when the Death of Superman came out.
Yeah, I remember that.
The actual comic book. And I remember in elementary school there was actually a handful of friends that I had that were also into it, and that, you know, I was kind of comfortable talking with them about it, talking about how much we like Wolverine and the X-Men and stuff like that. We were big into Ren and Stimpy comics and the cartoon. But I think the reason why in elementary school it was okay to be a nerd is because at that age, you didn't really care what people thought about
Yeah, and no
you.
one judges you when you're in elementary school.
Yeah, you weren't really like insecure about anything. You were just a kid having fun and going to school when you had to go to school. But I think it's different once you're in sort of like middle school and high school, when you're trying to really identify yourself and create your identity. That's when nerds like us were kind of hiding in the shadows and not really telling anybody, because like, you know, in high school, like, you want to try to get laid. You want to try to talk to girls and stuff like that. But then, like you said, it all kind of started to change. Would you say it was when the first X-Men movie came out, or was it when the first Spider-Man movie came out?
I think that's when it started, but it was really... It wasn't a quick start. It was a slow start. It was like, oh, cool, now you can talk about X-Men. Because I remember when like X-Men and Spider-Man came out, I think they were both roughly 1997.
Was it 97? I thought it was...
I think, no, it was 99 maybe. Because it was right when I was going into high school. And, you know, I remember like seeing these movies, and then my older cousins who were like the cool guys, they would ask me like, hey, who is this guy? Like, who is Sabretooth? Or, you know, who is Green Goblin? Who is Harry Osborn or Norman Osborn? Like, what's their story? And they still do that now. Every time they see a movie, they will text me or they'll call me, hey, so I just saw this movie, who's this guy supposed to be? And then I go into this 10-minute spiel, everything about them. Like, oh, that's so cool. And, these were guys who in high school played football, were, one's a fire, or two of them are firemen. They're not the people you'd imagine would call, but now they want to know because movies made these, made them interesting. It made us want to know who the hell is Wolverine or who the hell is Spider-Man, and it just wasn't the same.
Yeah, I mean, and as a correction, Spider-Man came out 2002.
Okay, so it was X-Men first.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Yeah, so X-Men was first, but X-Men didn't really get that box office numbers and that worldwide phenomenon like Spider-Man did.
Yeah, but
because I think the first X-Men was sort of like the test on how a comic book movie made, because you could see it when that was made, they were trying to really emulate the comic books with sort of the looks that the characters had.
Yeah, and if you think of it, the biggest name in that movie when it came out was Patrick Stewart. Ian McKellen was still he was big, but he wasn't A-lister like he is now. He was getting there, but he wasn't there. Same with Patrick Stewart. Everyone knew Patrick Stewart from Star Trek, but nobody really cared about Star Trek.
Yeah, because Ian McKellen, that first X-Men movie was before Lord of the Rings. Yeah, and then I saw it. I remember when my brother first showed it to us on DVD, I kind of had goosebumps. I was kind of giddy because I was like, because I read X-Men as a kid, and didn't the Blade movie first was the first sort of Marvel comic book that came out. But a lot of people didn't know that. I don't think a lot of people knew
just
that
thought that it was people thought it was just a Wesley Snipes movie because Wesley Snipes was one of the biggest actors, with the Passenger 57 and all these other movies.
he was the action star back then. And when you watch that sort of movie, it wasn't a movie that was branded with Marvel's logos on it.
It wasn't, not at all. And because that's actually when Marvel was going bankrupt, if I'm not mistaken, was right around that time. But you're right, that was 1998 when Blade came out, and Steven Dorff was still pretty hot at the time, and Chris Christopherson and Wesley Snipes. So they were kind of the, they were the names that drew in. Everyone's like, oh, Wesley Snipes and vampires. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and then X-Men came out, and then Spider-Man came out, and that just crushed it.
That's where
as far as comic book movies go at that time, because it had a huge opening that weekend. It sort of put Tobey Maguire back on the map.
Biggest opening at the time.
On the map. Yeah, it was the biggest opening at the time. And that was sort of the way it was done, was kind of a way to show you that, hey, comic book movies can be done.
What's crazy about that, too, is you remember where you were when you found out about 9/11. You remember where you were, when they got Osama bin Laden. And I can really remember, completely every detail of when Spider-Man came out. And I was like, I really want to see it. And when it came out in 2002, I think I was a sophomore, gonna be a junior, or maybe it was junior, gonna be a senior. And my friend, who's still one of my best friends now, Eric, he wanted to see it too. So we were like, hey, let's walk to the movies and go see it. So we had a half day, and we went to Vaughn's to go buy soda cans for 35 cents or whatever it was back then, the off-brand Shasta.
Those were the days where you could sneak shit into the movie theaters without a problem.
Ankles, bought some candy, and we walked 3 miles to the movie theater after school and went and saw Spider-Man. I remember it was packed. And it was in this little screen, little theater, and it was packed, and it was like, holy shit, greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I remember when I went to see it, because those were the days before Fandango ever existed.
This is where you had to get your information out of Wizard magazine about nerd movies. There wasn't, the internet was there, but there wasn't really websites about this. I remember the first website I ever went to that had nerd stuff was Superhero Hype. And and they're still around. But everybody had GeoCities pages, but it wasn't something people talked about or advertised.
Yeah, no one was really blogging about it because blogging wasn't a big thing. Like the only people, like you said, the only way you knew about it was if A, you saw the movie trailer, or B, you read it in Wizard magazine or some other like movie trade magazine, like Variety.
Yeah.
But I remember like when I saw it, when I went to see it with my friends, you had to get to the theater like 3 hours ahead of time. You went, you got your ticket, and then you waited in line because you wanted the best seats in the house. Because like most theaters today, you could get reserved seating, so you could just show up like 5 minutes before the movie starts, and the top of the seat is up there for you, still reserved. But back then it was like you wanted to make sure you had the best seat in the house, so you waited in line for 2 to 3 hours just to make sure that you could see that movie front and center at the very top of the theater.
Yeah.
But I came out of that movie just in awe of how cool it was. I mean, but looking back now, if I was to watch it, I was like, man, this it is pretty cheesy, with the oversaturated colors. The costume wasn't all that cool, but
Macy Gray singing.
Yeah, Kristen Dunst was in it. Willem Dafoe. The Green Goblin outfit was kind of cheesy.
Yeah, green metal.
Yeah, but back then we're like, oh shit, this thing's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
it was totally dope. And then when the second one came out, it was even better. And personally, I thought the second one was the best.
Yeah, Doc Ock was really good.
Yeah, and that was when sort of like CG was really coming around.
Actually,
for movies like that.
The first Spider-Man film was the first movie I ever acquired on the internet.
With what, through LimeWire?
I think it was Napster, and I remember it was a Chinese rip, and so you could hear like people laughing during it, and I remember just watching it over and over and over again.
Yeah, so that was like when you were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna download this movie as well as 50 viruses for my computer. But fuck it, I'm
gonna put AIDS on my computer for this movie.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm gonna watch the movie. I can watch it anytime I want without having to pay the $10 for that movie ticket. But it's like, what was about that movie that made people who never really knew about Spider-Man still to go out and see it?
So what I think is that Spider-Man was, the superhero that everyone knew. There was a 60s cartoon. There was the 80s cartoon. There was the 90s cartoon. Like, there was always stuff about Spider-Man, always around. He was the face of Marvel. Still to this day, he's the number one selling comic for Marvel. He was the Batman and Superman of the Marvel Universe. And so people, because of familiarity, and if you think, they made the movie not just for kids, but they made it for adults too. It had a storyline that was, that wasn't just, it had a lot of science in it, it had the business aspect. It wasn't just, here's a high school kid who gets powers. They actually focused so that the whole audience, or the general audience, could like it, and not just kids. And I think that's really where it became a powerhouse, is because that interested, adults, that interested kids too.
I mean, I think you're right. I think with the whole, like, this was your average high school kid who was a nerd, and then all of a sudden he becomes a superhero. I think that's what got more people interested into it that really didn't grow up with the comics or never really read Spider-Man. And so, like you said, it was meant for all ages. And I think that's when number 2 came out, and then when movies like Fantastic Four started coming out,
yep,
and then Transformers, and then the Hulk. Oh god,
Eric Bana and Ang Lee.
I'm not even going to talk about the first
with
Hulk.
The poodle.
Like, yeah,
the monstrous poodle. That was
the monstrous poodle and Pitbull.
Poor Eric Bana.
Yeah. Damn, that just triggered me. I wanted to like it, and then you're just like, okay, this is how comic book movies should not be made.
Yeah.
But and it's like, and it sucks because like to this day, they don't know how to do Hulk right on a solo movie.
I thought the Incredible Hulk was pretty good. Edward Norton.
The one with Edward. That was good. Yeah, that was a little bit better. That's when they kind of learned their lesson, not to give it more of that comic book feel, but give it more realistic tone.
Yeah, grounded in reality.
Yeah. And then I think like when movies like Fantastic Four and Spider-Man came out, and the Hulk were coming out, that's when it was cool to like be into that stuff, because now you could see it on the big screen, and now it's being a little bit more known, and I think that's when it started to open it up for people, where they're like, oh, okay, if movie studios are making these movies, then like I could finally be like, yeah, I've been into this for a long time.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you all about it.
And then we didn't hear anything really from Marvel movies for a while, and then DC and Warner Brothers made the Batman saga. And then from there, when Comic-Con got big, that's like when everybody knew being a nerd was okay, being a nerd was legit, and it's like you didn't really have to be ashamed about it anymore.
I remember going to Comic-Con in 2006, and then 2008, and then 2010, and every year it was just bigger, and every 2 years it was bigger and bigger and bigger, and then 2013 was just like, what the hell happened? And then 2014 was what? And 2015 was even bigger, and this year it was a lot less people.
I think, well, why would you even say that? Like, what would make you think that Comic-Con was a little bit, do you think they've been a little bit more strict on who gets badges, or do you think people are just kind of burned out for a while where they need to take a break from comics?
I don't think there was that much news this year. You kind of go in knowing what to expect. There wasn't there wasn't Avengers Infinity Gauntlet or an Avengers movie. There was, or an Iron Man movie. It was Doctor Strange. Granted, DC did have, they were kind of the show stealer. But also I think the security was more strict. You couldn't really do handbacks like you could before. There wasn't nearly as many.
Don't give out trade secrets, Bob.
Oh yeah, there wasn't really any cosplayers there. Very few. Art Nerd Reactor couldn't even film a video because there wasn't enough. And I to me, I was okay with it. I mean, it was still really packed. It was 200,000 people, but it wasn't. It wasn't noticeable that it was 250,000 people or 300,000, or however many people go there every year. It was definitely different, and I think there's a lot of things that factored into it, and it kind of made me happy.
That's good. I mean, because I remember going to Comic-Con like in 2008.
Yeah.
Something like, and it's like you could walk around the convention hall.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to wait outside of Hall H for days just to kind of see the panel.
Yeah, I remember I went to Hall H and I went to go see. First we saw 24, and then it was Prison Break, and then it was, and that was the first Prison Break. And then what was it after that was the big draw? It was Spider-Man. It was one of the Spider-Man. I think it was the Andrew Garfield, like the first year or the 1st one he did.
Well, that came out in what, 2012, I think.
No, because there was 2 of them. I thought that was 2010.
2013.
Then what was? Oh no, that was a different year. Okay, but even if like Hall H, you didn't have to camp out for until 2013, 2014 maybe. Now it's like you have to wait, 36 hours just to get a seat in the room. It's mind-boggling.
I mean, because our buddy Mark talks about it all the time. He's passionate about it, Hall H. He updates Nerd Reactor during Comic-Con for the Hall H news. And, we see when he posts the things. I mean, he's waiting outside. He's sleeping in the convention hall just to grab a seat inside of Hall H. And then you can't really leave.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like that back in 2006, 2007. it was cool to go to Comic-Con and like you could see everything within that weekend, because nowadays like there's just so much to do that it is difficult to even catch everything, because you're half of the time you're just waiting in line just to see something.
Yeah,
So
it's not the same. Like now when I go past, 2 years now, I didn't even go inside. It's
Yeah.
not nearly the same thing as it used to be. I mean, it just smells like neck beards when you walk inside now. It's not even enjoyable. But like we said, the good thing about being a nerd now versus then is that it's cool to go to. Like when I say, "Hey, I'm 30 and I'm going to Comic Con," I'm not judged. It's 10 years ago, if I said I'm 30 and going to Comic Con, people would be like, "Oh, this dude lives in a basement." Like, it's completely different now versus then.
continuing on, so we could all agree that, you know, being a quote unquote nerd today is, I don't know, I wouldn't really say it's a fad. Though some people who are not nerds would probably say, "Hey, right now this all this stuff going on with the comic book movies and the Comic Cons and stuff, it's just a fad." But we can't really say that it's a fad, because it's more like it's essentially a lifestyle. Um, but the only downfall I would say, and I'm probably gonna get a lot of shit for this, but the only thing I would say the downfall about being a nerd is that we're a little bit too passionate about the stuff that goes on regarding the comic books and video games we grew up on. Like, some people really take into offense about it.
I agree. Like people can't go see a movie now and just enjoy it anymore. Like you can't go in there and remember like, hey, this is the biggest movie that we've been waiting for 20 years, and now it's finally here. But now I'm like, oh my god, their lighting is off, the texture is off, the color of the costume, it's a little too blue, or oh, why did they go so dark on the tones, or why wasn't there any humor, why was there too much humor, they're trying too hard, they're not trying enough. Like, you can't make everyone happy now, and it's because becoming a nerd has kind of created this elitist attitude, I think, where like, hey, I'm an expert in Star Wars, or I'm an expert in Star Trek, or I'm an expert in Marvel, so now I know everything about it. And now you have DC fanboys, you have Marvel fanboys going back and forth at each other. It's kind of created
That
this
rift. Yeah.
this acidic
And
like,
you're right. It's like,
attitude.
touching back to that whole Suicide Squad fiasco with Rotten Tomatoes. It's like, that's when that petition came out, I'm just like it's hard enough. It was hard enough growing up where you could talk about being a nerd, but now it's like, now you're just giving it another reason for people to dislike the idea of being a nerd, because you're so passionate. Now I'm not saying like don't be passionate about it, but it's like at there's a time where it's like you just got to bite your tongue and just let it roll off your shoulders, because you know what you like. If you love DC, you love DC. It's like, don't get mad at anybody else who will be like, "Oh yeah, Superman sucks. Batman sucks. Iron Man's better." Okay, maybe they're a Marvel fan and they'll say that just to get the rise out of you. But like, if you love DC, just love DC. Don't go out hating on everybody who doesn't like DC. Like, because you and I both, we don't really have a preference whether it's Marvel or DC. We just we enjoy it all, you would say.
Yeah, I like to be somewhat of an expert in every category, whether it's DC or Marvel or Star Wars, just not Star Trek.
There goes our Star Trek listeners. Let's bring them back in, but we can't, because I don't really watch Star Trek, except the movies.
Yeah, the movies are great.
But like, and another thing about being a nerd is being associated with Nerd Reactor. I would say, I don't know if you've seen this, but I kind of see it, that inside the nerd community, the ever growing nerd community, it's like they expect you to know everything about everything. Like if you're a nerd and you're like, oh, I just read Marvel, like you get chastised for not liking DC or not liking or not reading like The Walking Dead or other Vertigo titles.
Yeah.
Like
that's why I said earlier. There's this like elitist attitude now where, oh, you don't listen, or you don't read Saga. You only read X-Men. You're not a real nerd. You're a sellout. It's.
So for those who say it's like a fad, I think they're entirely wrong. I think this is like a lifestyle that's probably gonna be around for a very long time. I think being a nerd will die down once video games, comic books, and movies are out.
Plateau, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, enough about that. Why don't we talk about some news? Let's wrap up this
week's
podcast and let's hit these guys up with some news. Well, let's see. They do new news. Oh, biggest news story yesterday. R2-D2 died.
Kenny Baker, the actor who played R2-D2,
And for those millennials who don't know, yes, in the original Star Wars, a dude fit in that. His name was Kenny Baker. He was about that life, and sadly, he passed away yesterday at 83. Was he in episode 1, 2, and 3, or did they go CG on that?
4, 5, and 6. They went CG
on 1, 2, and 3, right? And then
Yeah.
4, 5, and 6, the originals, the ones from the 70s.
And 80s,
when they didn't have computer graphics, they had to do practical effects. Kenny Baker was the guy inside that outfit, doing the noises, filling your hearts with robot love.
And he did.
So, rest in peace, Kenny Baker. And continuing on our Star Wars news, the new Rogue One trailer came out this week. The story trailer, right?
Yep.
I'm assuming you watched it. Did you watch it?
Yes,
How
I
many
did.
times did you watch it?
Just
Don't
once.
lie to me. Come on.
No, just
Bullshit, Robert. You knew.
No, I just watched it.
You watched it the first time it got posted. You probably watched it the second time taking a deuce.
No, I watched it once, and then I think I watched a scene of it where someone like linked it, and they were complaining about one of the characters being a stereotype. So they linked it like right at that person's scene, and I watched.
Oh, you mean the Asian guy being the stereotype?
Yeah, I was trying not to say.
I said it, but I said it jokingly when I posted it on Facebook.
Yeah, well, someone else said, even in the future, Asians are still being, characterized as the karate. And I was like, no.
That was me.
And I was like, no.
Yeah.
Was it? No. Somebody else did it because they were serious, and I know who it was, and I just don't want to say it. But it was one of a person we know had said it. It wasn't yours. Yours was a joke. And this person, and I put in the comments, well, this wasn't in the future. This was a long, long time ago in a galaxy far away. And they didn't get it.
Oh, Jesus.
And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. That's when you just have to
It's like,
hang your head in shame and move on. But anyway, I mean, I watched it a couple times. I think it's awesome. I mean, I'm not like a diehard Star Wars fan. I'll watch all the movies. But like, if you quiz me on it, I'd probably lose. But I'll admit, I watched the new Rogue One trailer a few times. I think the style it was done in is pretty cool. Like, it really has a different look than The Force Awakens. So that's kind of what excited me. And with the big Darth, hopefully everybody has seen it, and I'm not spoiling anything. But the big Darth Vader reveal at the end, I was like, that's cool. I'm not gonna like get get the chills about it and start crying.
Yeah.
But it was dope. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm not as excited as I was about The Force Awakens, but I'm still looking forward to this
and
movie.
it's directed by the dude who did
Gareth
Godzilla.
Edwards. Yes, Gareth Edwards. And has Alan Tudyk in it.
Yeah.
Like, that's
And-
awesome. Forrest Whitaker.
And if you guys haven't seen it, I recommend watching Monsters.
Oh, yeah,
Like-
he did do that. Monsters was really good.
But don't watch the sequel. Yeah.
The sequel's bad. Watch the first one, which is why he got Godzilla.
And don't expect it to be like a true monster movie. It's a little bit more heavier than that, but it's cool. I've watched it a couple times. But yeah, if you like Godzilla and if you've seen Monsters, then you'll be excited for the new Rogue One movie. And then of course, and we'll end on
our last piece of news that we touched on a little bit
yeah,
earlier.
the Ghostbusters reboot losing $60 million due to the audience disinterest, and of course killing any plans to have a sequel. Like I said, I still haven't seen the movie. I am planning on seeing it just to check it out. I don't really care that it's an all-female cast. I agree with you, Robert, that Melissa McCarthy is an awesome actress. Leslie Jones is cool. She brings that, can I say hoodness to it?
Kristen Wiig is, she's always been a great supporting character in every comedy she's been in. And Kate McKinnon is new. I haven't really seen her in anything.
But she does great impressions on Saturday Night Live. So she's cool. And of course it has Chris Hemsworth and Slimer.
A comedian, Adam Ray, played
Yeah.
Slimer, who also plays the guy in the metal band, the lead singer for in the film. And I think the problem with the movie is it obviously had a lot of negative press, but I also think that the way they marketed the film was towards the female audience. There hasn't been a movie that's driven the female audience to come out in numbers since Bridesmaid, which was Paul Feig's movie, and before that was Twilight. Like, they should have marketed this towards both male and female, and they said they did, but I've watched the trailers over and over because I've written about it every single time, and I never pointed out on there because I was trying to be objective, but the trailers are really marketed towards females. Like, they put Chris Hemsworth in it, and he's a great actor, but he was in there because he is eye candy, for the female audience.
And for some the male audience, we don't want to sound.
Yeah, they wanted to bring someone in who the males would want to see because that's freaking Thor. Like, people love.
But you're right. I think that they didn't really market it well for both audiences. They really were trying to rely that it is the female. It's meant for the female audience, but it really should have been sold to just the Ghostbuster fan base in general.
Yeah.
I mean, but the problem was, ever since this movie was first announced, like, people were hating on it already. Like, they were upset that they were doing this new Ghostbusters reboot that wouldn't have Dan Aykroyd or, like, Bill Murray in it. And if it does, I don't know because I have not seen the movie.
Yeah.
Are they? Okay, now I just sound stupid.
Yeah, when it originally came out, Bill Murray said he wanted nothing to do with it. When they first announced the movie, and I remember I hated on the movie. I was like, this is so stupid. Like, why would they do this? It's not going to make any money. Granted, I was correct, but I still wanted to give it a chance. When I saw the first trailer, it was terrible. Then the international trailer came out, and it was really good. And I was like, oh, this actually looks like it's going to be fun. And this looks like this can be awesome. Because the original rumors are one of the versions that actually Max Landis had written a script for with Ghostbusters. If I'm not mistaken, it was supposed to be like the sons of the Ghostbusters, but there was a girl in it too, and it was supposed to be like Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum and all those guys, and like that would have been hilarious. and that they ended up going this direction because of Bridesmaids, the success of it with Kristen Wiig, Paul Feig, and Melissa McCarthy, and and unfortunately it didn't happen. It made a lot of money, but it also lost a lot of money because of how much they spent on marketing, which is really sad because there was a lot of great production, or it looked like it was had some CGI that looked pretty good. It looked like they spent a lot of money from everything they filmed, and I just wish more people could have given it a chance.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. If you guys haven't seen it, make it give it a chance, I would say.
Yeah, we're being kind of hypocritical because we haven't seen it either, but we're going to see it. We promise.
Do you want to see it together, Robert? We could Redbox it when it's on Redbox, because it's going to be on Redbox in a couple weeks or a couple months.
Yeah, it'll be on iTunes in like 3 weeks.
But we'll see it. It sucks that the movie lost that much money for a franchise that is wildly known. But it is what it is with the movie industry. You take your chances, you take the gamble, and the Ghostbusters just didn't pan out. But they say there's not going to be a sequel, but I guarantee there will be a reboot in the next coming years.
7 years.
Because they're, of course, they're already talking about rebooting Spider-Man. Well, they did talk about rebooting. They have. Did. I mean, and the last Spider-Man movie came out, 2014?
Yeah, to 2012, 2014, and then a new one next year, 2017.
Yeah, which is, take Spider-Man on a different route. So I would just say, Sony, get your shit together and make something that has a lasting effect. Yeah. Agreed. So I guess we could wrap it up there. This is our very first episode. I think we did well with it. How do you feel, Bob? Do you feel like we could probably do this on a weekly basis for people?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's possible.
Do we really have that much to talk about? Is there stuff that we could continue to bore people with?
Yeah, we got some ideas, including conventions and all the other stuff you guys want to hear about. Since everyone always asks us about that, we'll be having episodes with different themes each week.
So, like Robert said, we're going to try to bring you new topics every week. We'll also have some guests on the show from Nerd Reactor to talk about some things that we can't talk about. And we'll probably try to do, some live podcasting at some conventions. Don't hold my word to that. But I can't promise anything, but we'll try. That's the only thing we could ask for.
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone, and make sure that you're living that nerd life.
If you ain't about that life, be about that life. That nerd life. Is that my outro? Is that the good outro? I should probably work on that.
Yeah, maybe. Well, you can also follow us. You can follow Nerd Reactor on Twitter, Facebook, at nerdreactor.com, or you can follow us individually. My Twitter handle is LongLiveBob.
Mine is that dude Arvin. Is that right? I changed my Twitter handle. I can't even remember. But yeah. So I guess that's it. So yeah, thanks for listening, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.